Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles Podcast. I am Bo Wulf, sitting next to Zach Berman as we are here on a Wednesday morning. We've got a lot to get to. We're going to be taking your questions, do a little mailbag, quail bag, whatever you want to call it, and then about halfway through, we're going to talk about our sort of deep dive thoughts on the Jason Kelce documentary. We'll save that for the end in case people haven't watched it yet. You can come back and revisit this episode, but I think the most important thing that everybody can see if you're watching is that right there on the desk is a copy, finally, of Underdogs, the Philadelphia Eagles' emotional road to Super Bowl victory. Zach Berman, you finally did it.
Yes, I brought it in. You sent the tweet at, 6 a.m. this morning?
Oh, I think I scheduled that bad boy for like 4:45.
Is that right? Okay. And
I was not up to send it. I did it, as a friend of yours. I took it upon myself to finally, give you a little kick in the rump.
So this will be on the bookshelf. And as I said yesterday, the goal was to get it off bookshelves, but it will be on this bookshelf. And you can relive the 2017 Super Bowl run. And perhaps the Eagles
just like
are in
Nick
their...
Foles over my shoulder here now.
Yeah, perhaps the Eagles will have a sequel this year. We'll see.
Wow, what a tease, as if you know.
Well, no, I'm saying a Super Bowl sequel, not just another book, but a Super. I've said before, I'm already working on a.
No, I know, but I mean, this is a team that's 2-0, but everybody's complaining about them. You're already putting them in the Super Bowl.
I mean, I'm just trying to write a book here, right? So,
I feel like that would be a lot of extra work for the book that you're currently working on.
That's fine. I don't mind work. Run to it, not away from it.
Okay. And where can people who haven't already read or purchased this book, where could they pick one up?
They tell you to say wherever books are sold. You seem to not like that statement.
I don't dislike it. I find it probably inaccurate.
Okay. Well, most places where you buy a book.
Before the show, somebody mentioned that they have an adult bookstore near them. I don't know if they'll be selling it there.
They don't sell it there. No.
Okay.
They do not sell it there. But
might get some people in the mood.
It could. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. There's some good chapters in there. But no, wherever, I'd say most places where you buy books, you can find a copy of Underdogs, the Philadelphia Eagles' emotional road to the Super Bowl victory.
What was your favorite chapter to write?
My favorite chapter to write was, I would have to say the chapter on the game itself, because the material was so rich from actually the NFL films. Everyone's mic'd up, so you can really paint kind of a narrative as that was going on. I would also have to say the Yazoo City, Mississippi.
Chapter. You love Yazoo City. You love that little pat on the back.
Yeah, Fletcher Cox, his hometown, Yazoo City, Mississippi. I enjoyed the North Dakota stuff. There was...
and what's the name of the place that you ate in Yazoo City?
PHLY's. Got great crawfish there.
Okay.
I should tell Jalen.
You should. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Tell his girlfriend.
Next time, tell his girlfriend. Next time they're in Yazoo City.
People have one of the questions we have, Zach, is what's your Tampa plan for eating? What's your feeling peckish? Zach's trip on the road to Tampa. Where are you gonna eat?
There's a few places that I'd like to go in Tampa. Okay. The old favorite is Columbia. If you're familiar with that, great.
Supposedly the home of the home of the Cuban.
Great paella there.
Interesting.
Yes, you can hear Mrs. Costanza say, "What am I going to do with all this paella?" Yes, great paella there. There's a few other kind of newer spots in Tampa that I like. I've spoken to Nelson Aguilar about some of his Tampa recommendations. Of course, Burns Steakhouse. The story that never
got written.
Yeah, Burns Steakhouse is a well-known place. I don't think I'll make it to Burns this weekend, but if I can.
Are you on like the do not allow? Have you been kicked out? You're not allowed back at Burns?
Oh no, I would actually Burns. But a cool part of Burns is they have a dedicated dessert room, and I like this, right? So you eat your dinner.
Oh, you have to go to a separate room for dessert?
Yes,
Really?
there's a separate dessert room.
Why?
It's a very famous dessert room. It's like the Henry Wow's dessert room or something.
Really?
Yes, and they have a robust dessert menu.
And you're not going? This is like, it feels like your dream.
Are
you allowed to go just to the dessert room?
That's a good question, actually. I don't know. A steak dinner and a dessert room is a good combination. Maybe, honestly, I haven't looked into this weekend yet, but potentially.
Feels unlike you.
We'll see. I mean, I got a lot of work to do when I'm there, actually. So that's kind of, I don't know how much I'll be, I don't want to say gallivanting around town, but
Okay. You're doing solo podcasts?
Not doing a solo podcast, no. I have some writing to do this weekend.
All right, let's get to some of the Eagles-related questions before we get into some of the silliness. The Eagles, first of all, Zach, had a couple of workouts yesterday. I wanted to know if you wanted to talk about any of those guys. I'll give you the list here. According to Tom Pelissero, it all goes over through the league wire. They worked out 6 players. William Jackson, who we talked about yesterday, experienced former first-round cornerback who has had, I would say, more of a down than up career so far. He's over 30. E.J. Jenkins, tight end from Georgia Tech, spent camp with the Jets. He was a wide receiver in college, so one of those converted players. 2 running backs, John Kelly and Bryant Koback. Koback was with the Seahawks in training camp, also spent time with the Vikings. Isaiah Moore, linebacker from NC State. I kind of liked him a little bit as just a 7th round undrafted guy, sort of fits the like TJ Edwards type. Athletically limited thumper, has had some injury issues over the course of his career, got injured again over the summer with the Chiefs. And then Ellerson Smith, who was more of a edge rusher type, went to college at Northern Iowa. Anything pop to you there?
Well, whenever Bo Wulf feels compelled to tweet about a workout, I know that this is something worth paying attention to. So when you gave the BW Isaiah Moore endorsement,
I didn't endorse it. I said it was interesting.
Yeah, I
kind of like him.
Yeah, I like Bo Wulf there at like 5 o'clock last night. You see Isaiah Moore and you want to put that out to the world that this is someone you were intrigued by. You are proficient at evaluating late round picks, so I mean you nailed a few. You hit the Quez Watkins, John Hightower prediction there.
Okay.
So I'm going with your Isaiah Moore pick. I mean, realistically, in terms of those who could have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the list of workouts is less about the specific players and more about the types that they're bringing in, right?
I mean, William Jackson, from a veteran perspective, right? He has experience. Cincinnati, Washington was kind of a failed signing in Washington, but there's experience there that you like. Ellerson Smith had a real good frame. Oh, has a real good frame. I don't think the frame went away. But you're talking about, what, a 6'7", 260-pound edge rusher from Northern Iowa. John Kelly was an interesting back.
How come there's no Southern Iowa?
What's that?
How come there's no Southern Iowa?
Well, there is a Southern Iowa. I don't just think there's not a Southern Iowa university.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay. That's a great question for our Iowa listeners here. I'm curious, is there anyone listening or watching us, rather, from Iowa?
Are there any other state schools you can think of where there's a specific direction related to the state, but not the opposite one?
Well, there's.
You think about that.
I'll let that
run through your mind for the rest of the episode.
Yes.
I think 2 running backs is interesting, given that we're wondering whether they want to keep Rashad Penny around. The one thing I'm surprised that they haven't really looked at here, because my understanding is that neither John Kelly nor Brian Koback are necessarily returners. I would have expected they'd be a little bit more interested in potentially dipping into the return options, given the Covey fumble. Mm-hmm. He's on the practice squad, so they can't just keep promoting him. Is he meriting a 53-man spot at this point? I'm not so sure.
That's a valid point, and especially punt returner in particular, right? Because they can get by with Boston Scott returning kicks. That's a very good point, and at some point here, they're going to have to make a Covey decision in the next week. So perhaps this would be the time to do it. They have a short week next week. I didn't think of it in that frame, but that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, let's be serious here. We're on the Wednesday episode here, but because it's a Monday night game, the Eagles haven't done anything all week long. So we're spending about 10 minutes on the 6 guys they worked out yesterday.
That's good. Yeah, that's fine. That's
good stuff. Now
that's
later,
the type of content you're not going to get anywhere else.
Later today, we will hear from the coordinators.
Yes.
Okay. First question from Sean wants to know: say that Howie only has the ammo, whether it's picks or cap, for one move this season, which area would be the biggest area of improvement? And he mentions slot corner, safety, and linebacker. There's a similar question asking about what's a more likely mid-season trade, linebacker or safety. How do you sort of fall down there?
I think a safety who can play the slot, similar to C.J. Gardner-Johnson last year. And you're seeing a lot of safety slot combos in the NFL. That would be kill 2 birds with 1 stone. No, I should be careful there. Everyone's saying kill 2 birds here. We have our bird puns. But that would be the move I would make. Now, who that is, it's a fair question, and that's something we can get into in the next few weeks if they do go in that path. But a safety who can play slot would be the way I would look.
I think that if you just look at the way that Howie Roseman allocates resources, like which of those positions does he care about the most, I think the answer is certainly nickel. Now, if you could get a guy who can do both, that would be great. I think it's possible that if Mario Goodrich isn't what they're hoping he is, and whatever their other plans are there, if it's Bradbury and Job, if it's Sidney Brown, whatever it is, if that stuff doesn't work, I could see them being more likely to give up something for a nickel. I don't think they're going to give up anything significant for a linebacker. It's just,
I agree.
Like they knew that this was how the position was going to work out. This is how they have chosen to proceed. I think it's probably not going to change. I do think that safety, if let's say there was another injury, or if Sidney Brown just is not ready, then maybe that's another place where you could see something. Now, one guy who occurred to me that we didn't talk about because we talked about some of these options last week. Now that the Broncos are 0-2, Justin Simmons, 30 years old, 1 year left on his deal most likely. I think you can cut him for a good savings next year. That could be one where I think if the Broncos are pushing in their cards, then maybe he could be gotten.
It's a good name to watch. I mean, maybe more name than player at this point, but certainly he's been a really productive.
Wow, a shot at Justin Simmons.
No, maybe I'm saying I haven't watched a lot of Justin Simmons recently.
You're the one who's been just watching nonstop Denver content. You tell me.
True. Justin Simmons, I really liked him a few years ago, right? He was tagged, then given a big extension. Did watch some of that Broncos game the other day. Saw him make a tackle along the left sideline. But I would be on board with that. I like a Justin Simmons.
Well, it depends on the price. I mean,
always depends on price.
Yeah. Well, so you can't I wouldn't just definitely be on board with it.
Well, obviously price dependent. Everything's price dependent.
Okay. Joseph, Zach, wants to know any thoughts on Sidney Brown getting some playing time in the slot in the CJ/GJ role. Played that spot a lot in college and is physical enough to hold up against the run.
I've said this the past week, and I stand by it, that I think Sidney Brown's going to become a starter here this season, so I would do it sooner rather than later. I would rather learn about the player in September and October than learn about the player in November and December.
But he's asking specifically about the nickel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would do anything to get Sidney Brown on the field, so yes. And like you said on yesterday's show, you would prefer to have Sidney Brown in that role than Justin Evans in that role. Justin Evans has more experience playing the slot in the NFL, obviously. He has more experience in the NFL, but he took a fair number of snaps there with New Orleans last year. He's taken some slot snaps this year, like you said. I would still rather see Sidney Brown there based on the athleticism that he presents.
Yeah, I am curious to know if that's a thing that they are considering. I think it's probably not their top option, I'm guessing, but I'm curious to see how that goes. On the more like potential workout fronts, how many punters do you think would have to stink up the joint before the Eagles consider Matt Araiza? Do you think his stink is too strong for any team to look at him?
Well, the fact that it's week 3 of the NFL season.
I think that's right.
And that he was not in a camp this year. He was not on the preseason roster this year. He has not been signed. would make me think that teams are staying away from him.
I think so, yeah.
So my guess is that's not I think if that's a path they would have pursued, they would have pursued it already.
I think that's probably right. Next up from EP, who would win a Philly beat writer Royal Rumble?
And a Royal Rumble is just an all-out fight.
Yeah, no, so I think he probably means a battle royal, because a Royal Rumble is much more, related on the draw. Everybody comes out every 60 seconds or 90 seconds, or sometimes 2 minutes. Just one person comes in at a time. So I'm guessing he's going more for a battle royal, because otherwise I'm going to need much more information on when people are coming in the Rumble.
Sure. I'm going with Chris Franklin from NJ.com.
Interesting.
I think Chris, former football player.
Okay.
He's a nice guy, so the aggressiveness, maybe there's something there to be unleashed. But I think Chris would be the one that I would want on my team in such a fight.
Yeah, the thing I worry about with Chris is does he have too much of a target on his back? Because that's the deal in a battle royal, is if you're perceived as the top threat, and everybody else is going to sort of band together to try to get him over the top rope. So you got to think about who's got some alliances, who is capable of winning, but is maybe more like the number 3 threat. It's a tough call. So you can make a case for each. I think you can make a case for Josh Tolentino.
Okay.
I think. Very athletic, I imagine.
Yes.
Maybe a little sneaky.
Okay.
Good watch. Okay. Good viewer of the show, I'd say.
I apprate that, Josh.
I'm gonna go with Josh.
Okay. I actually think you would be
because I think Josh would also be good at partnering up with different people over the course of the battle royal.
I can see that. I think you though could have certain strategy involved here.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm happy to do I'll go under the bottom rope and hide underneath the ring and then try to pop up at the end and try to steal it. I'll definitely do that.
Yeah. So I would be worried about you in such a fight.
You should be.
Yes.
Okay. Next up, Zach, a question from Tim. After having to answer to his father and brother in back-to-back weeks, which family member will Nick Sirianni have to own up to for a poor game decision after week 3?
So you're saying there's going to be a poor game decision in week 3. Well, he has one other brother.
Yes.
Okay? We don't know which brother called him out on the 2-point conversion. Mm-hmm. In week 1, of course, what we're referencing was when his father wanted to know about going for the 4th down, which I actually agreed with. I didn't like the play call, but his father wanted to know about going for the 4th down. So what we have here are some options. It could be his mother. It could be his wife. It could be one of his children.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's say now. I'm not saying there's going to be a poor game decision.
I'm gonna go the next time that Nick mentions a family member questioning him about something that's not his dad or his brother. I'm gonna go with his oldest son.
Okay, I'm going with his wife.
Okay. Wow. You see, I mean, what a thing to follow here.
Yes. We know Nick's a loyal viewer, so. Nick, who do you want to go with here? Team Bo or Team Zach?
Yeah, I think he's going to go. He's going to tell the truth, and he's going to be, I'm the one who's going to be right.
We'll see.
And if there were such a line on that, maybe it's something that, DraftKings could add. Who's the next person that
great transition
Nick Sirianni is going to mention in his family as questioning one of his game day decisions? While we wait for that to show up on the sportsbook, let's talk a little bit more generally about DraftKings Sportsbook, because we are back with another week of football, and DraftKings Sportsbook is keeping us in on the NFL action with great offers every single game day. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Throw 5 down on any of this week's epic matchups to walk away an instant winner. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football is more fun when you are in on the action, so download the app now and sign up with code PHLY. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL with code PHLY. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles in Louisiana, 21 and older. Age varies by jurisdiction, void in ONT. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football. Terms for eligibility, terms and responsibility. Gaming resources, bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. That was almost perfect. And I think I slipped on one word there. That was like a 98%.
You typically nail the reads.
Okay. Let's talk DeAndre Swift. Zach, Bring It Home says, while Swift was great in the run game, his pass pro was a little less than desired, which is true. With the Eagles' struggles in the pass game so far, do they have a solid option in the backfield, or do they need to find one? Do you see any upgrade options out there?
I don't think the Eagles bring in a running back specifically for pass protection. That's an area where Kenny Gainwell has tried to improve, and they do like Kenny Gainwell in certain situations. You saw that last year. So I think we'll continue to see Gainwell in maybe obvious passing situations. I don't think Swift has been egregious there. Do you?
He was pretty bad in that game. There were a couple times when his inability to slow down the blitzer affected Jalen Hurts, but I think it was certainly outweighed by what he did with the ball in his hands. I think it probably is a situation like you're talking about where in like definite passing situations, those are probably the times when Kenny Gainwell will be on the field instead of him. I also think Boston Scott is okay there.
Yes. Yeah, I would be surprised if they brought in a running back specifically for that purpose.
I also didn't think that with Swift it was a want-to issue. I think it was like a technique issue, so it's also something that could be fixed.
Well, he's Philly tough. It's definitely not a want-to issue.
From right over there.
Oh, he went to school right over there.
Yeah.
I think he grew up that way.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Next up, Zach. From Fred. If Hurts continues to play as he has the first 2 games for the rest of the season, what is the ceiling for this team, assuming the rest of the offense and defense plays up to their potential? I think that's an interesting question.
Hurts continues to play the way he did these first 2 games.
Like 24th in EPA per drop, or 26th in EPA per drop back?
Probably a 10-win team, 10-7, let's say. The schedule gets more difficult, as we've discussed. So I would say a 10-win team that can win a playoff game or 2, but probably is not beating Dallas or San Francisco. They need Jalen Hurts to play at a much higher level for them to beat Dallas or San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that, like, to some degree, Jalen Hurts' ceiling is the Eagles' ceiling, right? And
can you say that about all quarterbacks or specifically Hurts?
No, I mean, you probably could say that about all quarterbacks, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think that Baker Mayfield's ceiling is like the Bucs' ceiling or whatever it is. I think this team is built what we saw last year, that when Jalen Hurts is playing his best, they can be the best team in the league. I don't think they can if Jalen Hurts is playing the way he played over the first 2 weeks. And I think, I'm a little bit worried about the way that he's played the first 2 weeks. So I'm very, very eager to see what happens on Monday night. How different do things look on offense after they have this little reset against another very good defense and a very good defensive schemer? If he looks on Monday night like he has looked in the first 2 weeks, then I think it won't be unreasonable to not sound the alarm, but to be a little bit on edge about maybe this team is not as like high ceiling as we thought a month ago.
Yeah, I'm not ready to sound the alarm either. I need to give it a little more time than 3 games, but there is the point we've discussed that defenses and opposing coaches in particular have spent the offseason watching Hurts, watching this Eagles offense, trying to figure out how to counteract it, and Hurts needs to show what his counterpunch is. I'm not worried about Hurts. He's built the equity with me. He has the benefit of the doubt. I think that a month into the season is when maybe you start to have more of the questions. But look, Joe Burrow has struggled too. I wouldn't be worried about Joe Burrow. Justin Herbert has struggled. I wouldn't be worried about Justin Herbert. So
you're not worried about the Bengals being 0-2?
No, I'm not worried about the Bengals. Now, in terms of getting home field and making a run in that regard, certainly so. But no, I'm not worried about the Bengals being 0-2.
Okay.
But the calf injury.
I think the Bengals are probably worried about it.
Okay. The Eagles started 0-2 in the 2003 season, I believe, and went on to the NFC Championship.
Okay. It was 20 years ago.
That's good math by you.
Yeah, very good. All right, Zach. Michael wants you to describe your ideal morning routine minute by minute. He wants a Huberman-like breakdown on the optimized sports journalist routine. So take a deep breath, sit back, and walk us through the ideal Zach Berman morning.
So we're talking about a school day, I imagine.
Yes, I mean I would imagine you would call it a work day, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, because I'm thinking about my kids, right? So I'm up. I'm up early. I probably do some some news reading before the kids get up.
What now? He wants like specifics. You're up early. What time are you up? Ideally.
5:30.
Okay.
And
are you doing the reading in bed on your phone? Are you getting out of bed? Sitting in your like breakfast nook. What do we got going on?
Well, no, my wife goes to the gym early a lot. So if
does she get up at the same time as you, or even earlier?
This morning she was up earlier. Okay. So I mean, sometimes it's in I have like a home office where I do my work.
Okay.
Where we used to do our podcast.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd be in there. Sometimes there is I do my writing better in the morning than late at night.
Okay.
I do most things better like in the morning than late at night, as we saw with the podcast. So I would if there's writing that I'm doing, I like to knock that out in the morning.
This is the ideal. Give me the ideal morning. That's the question. What is your perfect morning?
The perfect morning is I'm just spending time with my wife and kids. Right. So it's just that. I'm not doing work. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm spending time with my wife and kids.
The perfect work morning. That's the question.
So that's what I'm giving you here.
Okay.
So I'm saying I'm either writing or reading.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'll spend some time with the kids, from 6 to 7. Then I'm getting ready for work, and then I go to work. Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. It's not now on the road. I'm doing a lot of work in the mornings. Like I'm up and I'm writing, reading. Yeah.
What's the first site you go to? What's the first thing you go to read?
AllPHLY.com.
Okay, and then what's the second?
I go to The Athletic. I go to New York Times. I go to The Inquirer.
Because they post when they post their stories.
Yes, I know exactly when they post their stories. So I will do that. I'll check box scores from the night before. I like to see all box scores in baseball, NBA. I don't look at NHL box scores, but yeah, I'll know that typically, and then I'll read the news for the day, and then I should say get a workout in, but I'm not consistent enough there, and I got to be honest because when my wife watches this, she'll say if I say I got a workout in, she'll be like, you're being disingenuous.
But not in the ideal version, you can do that.
In the ideal, yeah. Yeah, take a walk or bike ride, listen to a podcast. Absolutely.
Okay. Jonathan Zach wants to know, following the get your best athletes on the field theory, do you see any way that Nolan Smith and Sidney Brown can get more snaps on defense? We sort of talked about the Sidney Brown thing, and somebody else asked, is the Jalen Carter, great start taking away some of the attention paid to Nolan Smith not really being much of a factor, especially as someone who could have been, in your estimation, the 10th overall pick?
He could have been the 10th overall pick, and I would not be worried one bit about Nolan Smith. He's recovering from this injury here. I think he's going to be fine. What I saw in the summer really impressed me. I did expect him to play more in these first 2 games, but I wouldn't be worried at all about Nolan Smith. Are you?
I'm not worried. It's 2 games into his career, but I did think he would flash a little bit more. But I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, it's.
I think it's too early to be worried.
It's 2 games,
but I do think that if he was the first of their first round picks, it would be a much bigger deal.
If he was the number 10 overall pick and he wasn't on the field, that's fair. I do want to circle back to the previous question real quick. What's your ideal morning?
What's my ideal morning?
Yes, your ideal morning routine.
I sleep until like, I don't know, 9.
Really?
Ideally, yeah, that'd be great.
Wow, okay.
I mean, what do you want to say? Like, ideally, yeah.
You
Then,
didn't accomplish anything at that point.
yeah, because I was probably accomplishing stuff overnight.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Yeah, you are a burn the midnight oil guy. I mean, you like your 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
I do. I don't know. I'm hanging out. I'm not doing work. That's the ideal morning.
Are you reading news? Are you consuming media in any variety?
I'm probably doing the Wordle and Immaculate Grid.
Okay. How'd you do on Immaculate Grid this morning?
Well, I haven't done the new one since it rolled over at
9 a.m.
at 9.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what? I got 8 out of 9 on football yesterday. I couldn't think of a Lion Falcon overlap.
A Lion Falcon overlap.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Okay.
So there you go.
That's a good morning.
Is it? K-Dot, Zach, wants to know, who are some of the players who are coming up on extensions in the near future? Howie usually likes to get out ahead of those. We do know that this is a thing that Howie likes to do, although he didn't do it last year specifically because he said he didn't want to sort of mess with the locker room juju that they had going on. You take a look at the guys who are coming up. It's not a great list this year.
Well, the two big ones.
Well, they've done Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
I'm talking about the ones whose contracts are ending. And they've done Jalen Hurts. That draft class is pretty barren otherwise. You know, Jalen Reagor's not here anymore. Kayvon Wallace isn't here anymore. Davion Taylor's not here anymore. You could theoretically extend Jack Driscoll. I don't think that they're going to do that.
Jack Driscoll.
So I think that draft class is probably gone. Then you go to the next draft class.
Exactly.
And that's when, you start to talk about Devontae Smith and then even Landon Dickerson and Milton Williams. I think those are probably next offseason things, though, and not in season.
Yeah, this offseason coming. Well, they can't extend those guys until after this season.
Right.
Starting after the season, I would imagine a Devontae Smith and a Landon Dickerson contract extension would be a priority, not letting either one of those guys hit free agency. Devontae, of course, they have the 5th-year option on, so there's a little flexibility. But my guess is they try to get ahead of that one. So those two. Hassan Reddick, that was a big story throughout the summer. I don't think that's something that happens in season, but after the season, I can certainly see them. Hassan Reddick's going into the final year of his contract next year. That's a potential extension candidate. As far as in-season options, no, I don't see one because of, like you said, that draft class was not particularly good in terms of veterans who are on second contracts. There's not one that jumps out in my mind at this point.
Yeah, I mean, everybody whose contract is expiring, who's a veteran, is a player who was signed for cheap and is not in their long-term plans.
Yeah, unless they did something on Reddick, which they haven't shown an inclination to do quite yet. Slay and Bradbury, they already took care of this past offseason. None of the safeties, none of the linebackers, can't do any of the D linemen, the edge rushers. So there's no one that jumps out, but I do think Landon Dickerson and Devontae Smith are going to be offseason priorities. And I can see if the Eagles give those guys money during the offseason and not early next season, then it's one of those things where Howie says, well, you have to include this as part of our free agency class. We allocated money to Devontae and to Landon. You don't
lump Milton Williams in there?
I don't think it benefits Milton Williams to sign a contract extension. I mean, they drafted 2 guys in the first round. Yeah. Milton Williams' opportunity is probably better elsewhere in terms of meaningful playing time than here.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, Fletcher Cox isn't going to be back forever. There's 3 defensive tackles get to play a lot.
Okay.
If he likes the scheme, if he likes the place, if he's offered, instead of having to risk getting injured in his 4th year, if he's offered significant money, I don't think that that's crazy.
If you were Milton Williams' agent, what would you tell him?
I would ask him, what's more important to you? Assured money or the potential upside? What's your risk variance? I'm not going to tell him what to do. I'm going to work for my client. My client doesn't work for me.
That's a good point.
How much do you love Philadelphia, Milton?
That's a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
Boy, if an agent asked me that, my question would be, I love Philadelphia quite a bit.
Yeah, we know.
I don't want to go anywhere else.
The Devontae thing, though, this is it is the undercurrent of the A.J. Brown conversation that we've been having. There's another question we have in here about, how realistic is it for them to continue paying all these guys? Do you have any doubt that Devontae Smith will be an Eagle long term? And if you had to put your turkeys on only Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown being on the team in 3 years, who do you think is more likely?
In 3 years, I would go A.J. Brown.
Interesting.
I think that they're going to do everything they can to keep Devontae Smith. I think it's going to be a priority. I don't think it's going to be a matter of resources. I think they'd be comfortable paying 2 wide receivers top of the market dollar when they have 2 wide receivers that they view as top of the market players. This is a position where they've seen the alternative, as we've discussed. That said, it's going to be up to Devontae, and I would imagine that they'll make it work. But yeah, I would feel more confident that the guy who's under contract, although he's not under contract for a significantly longer period, but under contract, A.J. Brown, similar age profile. Yeah, I would probably say A.J. Brown.
I agree in that I think they are, we know the positions they care about and the positions that they should care about. I don't think there's any doubt that they want to pay both of those guys.
Yes.
They're not going to be skittish about paying Devontae Smith, the full market value. I think it's more likely that Devontae is here long-term than A.J. Brown.
And why do you say that?
For several reasons. One is we've already seen A.J. Brown change teams. We've already seen a situation sour in his career, so there's the history of that. We've seen the stuff already, which is not a big deal in the context of this season, but it's an indication that, this is a player who, wants the ball as much as he can get the ball and is mercurial about that sometimes. And I also think there is a Howie Roseman affinity for guys he's drafted. And I think the fact that he drafted Devontae Smith is a little bit more of I want to keep this guy around as part of the next generation of your Kelces and Fletcher Coxes and Brandon Grahams and Lane Johnsons than there is with A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has more of an injury history. Okay.
I view A.J. Brown like Jason Peters. They traded a first-round pick for him and gave him top-of-the-market money. The Eagles did the same thing with Jason Peters in 2009, and Jason Peters was...
And he's still kicking.
He wasn't a homegrown player, but he was very much a core franchise player for the better part of a decade, 2009 to 2020. Made the Pro Bowl every season from 2009, or almost every season from 2009 to 2016. So I view A.J. Brown the way they viewed Jason Peters. They gave they didn't draft him. They gave up a first-round pick for him and an additional pick. They gave him a $100 million contract. A.J. Brown's very much a core player here, and I don't see that changing.
Okay. I guess we'll have the long timeline of history to go back on this.
Well, I think both are going to be here because I think they're going to pay top of the market money for Devontae, and I think the Eagles are going to have, if not the best wide receiver combination, one of the best wide receiver combinations for the next 5 to 8 years.
Okay, Zach, why don't you tell me a little bit about game time?
I would love to because I'm always in the market for tickets. Sometimes, well, I shouldn't say always, but sometimes in the market.
You said always, sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that covers your bases.
I covered myself there. I'm going to a game this weekend. The next time I go to a game, I'm definitely going to be looking at the game at the Game Time app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful, and sometimes they're more stressful for me than they should be. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And I want to emphasize that it doesn't have to just be sports. It could be a great comedy show. It could be a great concert that's coming to town. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Browse through the Game Time app, and you can find upcoming events in your area. There are flash deals for last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in the area. You can look at the seat view images. That is so important because you don't want to buy a ticket and then get to the stadium and all of a sudden it's an obstructed view where you don't quite like the angle. See that on Game Time. There's the lowest price guarantee with event cancellation protection and job loss protection. Think about all of that. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. How about that? It's the fastest growing ticket app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive, and you buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, Zach, let's turn our attention to the Jason Kelce documentary. So for those of you who haven't watched it yet, pause, revisit this, and if we have time at the end, we'll get to a few more questions. But first question for you, did you cry at all?
Did not cry at the doc, but found it touching in certain moments, found it relatable in a few moments, and really well done. Credit to Kelce, to Connor Barwin, to the production team. It went by quickly. And it was really well done. But no, it did not cry. Did you cry?
I cried several times.
Real? Okay. When did you cry?
I'm an easy crier.
Apparently so.
I cried the scenes with the brothers and Ed talking about how it's like the coolest picture he'll ever have.
That was my favorite. Yes, exactly.
I cried when Kylie was crying at the Super Bowl. That was a good one. I think I cried another time too. I'm an easy crier.
So
I'm an
easy
mark.
cried at the picture of Travis scoring the touchdown and touching.
Yeah.
That I was going to bring that up. So I'm glad you and I think alike. That was I thought the
one of us just thinks a little deeper, just feels a little deeper.
I thought that was such a cool moment. Was like seeing the pride in Ed Kelce's face at that photo.
And the way they talk about it, it is a little bit surprising that, not that like they're both so good, but they haven't tried to really find a way to play together in the NFL, right? But
yeah, they're both in good situations, for sure.
I think Kelce is such an interesting, and I think probably like once in a generation type athlete in Philadelphia, because he is this proxy for the everyman, right? And I think about I was doing the Kevin Patullo story this summer where I played I was following a round of golf between Kevin Patullo and his daughter Lauren, and we're on one of the tee boxes, and this guy who works at the golf course comes up in his cart, and he's talking. He's like, "Are you that Eagles coach?" And he starts talking, and he's just like a typical Eagles fan. He's like, man, Jason Kelce, that speech he gave, I'll never forget. Like he's a king in this city forever.
Yep.
And that is true. And, Jason is so good at sort of underplaying his value. He talks about how in his mind, a Hall of Famer is somebody who is scheme diverse.
Yes.
And he got in this very specific good situation. And he's always a little bit downplaying his own self. And I thought the most honest part of the whole documentary, and it was really, it was great access. I loved everything about the family stuff and some of the behind the scenes Eagle stuff that we hadn't seen before. But I thought the most interesting thing, the most honest thing was what he said when he was making his decision at the end. And he said, where else am I going to find something where I am the best in the world at what I effing do, right? And not because it was given to me because I earned it. But I think that peek into he knows he's really, really, really good.
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk like that often. I thought that was a nice little peek into something of this guy who is, I think some people might say overexposed to some degree. He doesn't always show that part of himself.
That's fair. To that point, from a football perspective, when he was at the card table with the other.
That was such a
retired
funny
players.
scene.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that that Kelce and Selleck and Harold Carmichael and Mike Quick and Jason Avant and Trent Kohler like getting together for weekly poker games?
I don't know, but that was so interesting. That was so fascinating to me, just from a human perspective, because these guys, a lot of their identity is tied into being a football player, right? And what happens when...
Which was the like original conceit of the documentary, right?
Exactly. And what happens when that's not there? And it's something that I've spoken to Jason about, and I've spent time with Jason like on trying to figure out what's after football, and not just what you do after football, but how you view yourself after football. And that goes to what you were just saying before about like how else, where else could you be the best player in the world? And I thought, or the best in the world at what you do. And one of the fascinating, like, bearing his soul moments when he was talking about CTE, and he was talking about being with grandchildren and this push-pull, if you will. Like, he can do all these amazing things, and he can have this influence on the world and in the city of Philadelphia, and obviously make a great living and set up his family for generations. And the flip side of that is he doesn't know if he'll be able to play with his grandkids the way his father does. That...
Right. Is it better to live longer or live bigger, right?
Yeah.
Live fuller.
I thought that was very kind of touching and revealing. So from a football perspective, those scenes kind of jumped out.
I thought the CTE thing was interesting because it was a little bit, he was talking about it a little bit differently than he did when I did the story following his injuries over the course of a season.
2019 season. Check that out. Yeah.
At the end of that, he was a little bit more, not flippant, but much less concerned about the future than he seems to be 3 years later. And just 3 more seasons of accumulation of hits, and also seeing his kids grow up more.
Yeah.
I was just, if you go back and read what he says at the end of that story, it's a little bit different tonally than the way that he was talking about it with Barwin. A little bit more concern, I think.
And fatherhood probably has that effect on you, like you said. I thought Kylie was awesome.
Oh, star of the show, no doubt about it. She was awesome.
A lot of respect for her.
Rachel was like extremely secondhand anxious about the whole like traveling 38 weeks pregnant thing, and bringing the sutures on the airplane. She was like, this, like, I can barely watch. This is too much.
The Saturday Night Live scene
yes.
was one of the most relatable,
very real, yeah,
scenes that I've ever experienced. And now, I mean, this is about Jason. It's not about us. But a week after Saturday Night Live, I think it was, I was actually in LA with Kelce, and Kelce was doing I shouldn't say with Kelce. I was following Jason while he was doing.
I mean, you were there with him.
Yeah, he was doing a broadcast boot camp, and there was, I followed him around for 3 days, and at like 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock on the last day there, I had to either catch a flight then or stay another night and catch the flight the next morning. And there was like one last thing, and I said to Jason, I was like, Jason, my wife would, there was like a lot going on in my family that week. I had to get home, and I was like, my wife and my kids, like, I need to get home tonight. Can I follow up with you on this? And he's like, Zach, get to the airport, right? And so I thought that was that Saturday Night Live scene. Like we've all been there. I've been there.
On both sides of the phone call.
I remember vividly. I was on that side of the phone call, LA, when the Eagles stayed between the Seattle and LA game in 2017, and I was definitely, I've experienced that before. I just thought it was so honest and relatable. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was good. Rachel also said, it's a much lesser degree with us, but like just the seeing like the family, how the beats work around the football season and how everything is tied to that, and it's like, oh, great, they're going to the Super Bowl. Like, does it have to be the year that I'm pregnant? Like, or, you know. And she said the like the scene when Kylie's like, "Shh, Danny's doing a podcast," was like very, very hitting home.
Yes. I also thought, like, seeing Jason as a brother, and when Travis was going through that stuff in college, and seeing Jason have his back and Jason vouch for him, really jumped out to me. That you know, there's so much made about like them being brothers in fame, but being brothers in hard times too, and Jason having his back, and you know, going through a lot growing up, and them being resources for each other, jumps out.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I also thought of you in one point.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, and
I remembered when I also cried. I also cried when they were watching the Chiefs game at Chickies, and then they realized that this thing is going to happen. Yeah.
You cried in that moment?
Yeah, they were crying. Of course I'm crying.
So the part that I think where you and Jason have a lot maybe in common is I could see you not being able to find your keys in your house the way Jason could.
Oh, I'm good with my keys.
Okay.
I'm good with my key. You thought of me in that moment? You don't even know me that. Like, what, you just assume that I don't have my keys?
Yeah, I could see you like being on top of all these things.
Oh, no.
But not being able to find
I know where my keys are because my keys are always in the same place. That's
okay.
There are probably other things,
all right, well, so
like
then
my
I will
Super
own
Bowl
up to
ring, maybe. But, yeah.
I will own up to it. I have the Apple AirTag on my keychain.
Yeah, you love technology, even when you don't, even when it's something you don't need technology for.
No, but I am. So I'm never worried about losing my keys because I have.
Right, but what if you lose your AirTag?
But they're all the AirTag's on the.
Okay,
key, but they were always in my pants pocket from the day before.
Okay, so. All right. I was surprised by Jason Kelce eating Papa John's.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. You know, he's sitting at home there. We can't get a better slice of pizza than Papa John's.
Yeah, there's some spots around his house I can recommend.
You think that was could that have been an NFL plant?
Yeah, maybe so.
I think it might have been because I think I might have seen some Wawa there too. I think it might have been part and parcel of like the Eagles sponsors. Let's get some food here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe so.
You know what I liked was the Nick Sirianni speech after the back-to-back Gardner Minshew losses, because we don't always get to see like the version of Nick Sirianni who is connecting with players in that way, and he's saying, you know, GTFU, you know, you got to go out there and be the baddest MFer on the field. Like I thought that was an interesting peek. The Kelce speech before the Super Bowl was very funny. You know, like he's talking about like Sayamalu's Frankenstein foot, and then he just takes. Why has he got to bring Boston Scott Tight into this? Like, like, what does that have to do? I mean, it brought the house down. But,
yes, exactly. But the way he had Hurts's back there was pretty cool too.
Yes, very interesting. The two lines that made me laugh out loud were after the Chiefs won in the AFC Championship game. They asked Ed Kelce what his day was like. He's like, well, I started drinking at 11. I thought that was funny. And then when one of Kelsey's daughters came in, she's like, I got to dance. I thought that was very funny.
As I'm going through this year, I thought too that when you see kind of the course of the season, you see the dealing with the injuries part of it. I thought the cattle farming or the cow farming in Missouri. He has a cattle ranch, and seeing him learn how to do it, I cracked up at this. You can show I have no experience in cattle farming when they got that. I don't even know what it was. He's like, this thing's gonna last you 15 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, Andrew appreciated that one. Yeah, like. This one thing, he's telling me, he's like, this is gonna last you 15 years. Right. I was cracking up at that.
Well, I also think that the unsaid part of that whole season is, and it's like what you wrote about this offseason, is that like he entered that season not knowing what he's going to do when he retires. Yes. You know, is it going to be the cattle farming? And Barwin, you know, jokes with him like cattle farming or podcasting, like. He's going to be a media superstar. Well, like whenever he's done, he's going to, and you know, and there's the real estate that he's dipping his toes into too. But like, and you know, Selleck makes a joke about he's done a bunch of stuff and failed at them all. Like, Jason Kelce is going to be a great media personality. He's going to be very highly paid for that. It's like that is what's coming next.
So actually, to that point, what I found interesting was he didn't know how good he was going to be at podcasting.
Right.
And it kind of seemed like he kept playing, and Parkus the podcast was so popular.
I know, there wasn't playing.
But I've spoken to Jason about his podcasting, and he's like, I've complimented him quite a bit, and he's always like, well, it's heavily
And I
edited.
know that he looks up to us in that capacity.
He's like, it's heavily edited and so on and so forth. But you saw like the first podcast, he didn't know if it was going to be good, and then it just kind of took off.
Right.
And it was. I thought Barwin's point, and Connor's accomplished so much post playing too, and has kind of searched and found different avenues for him to explore. But I thought it was really interesting when Barwin was saying his biggest fear for Jason is that he does all these different things.
Right.
He makes a lot of money, and he's not good at any of them.
Right.
Right. He's like spread himself too thin.
Right.
He's, to use the cliche, a mile wide and an inch deep. And it was so nice. And then, I'm sorry, it was so revealing. And the other part too that I found fascinating, and credit to Jeff McClain at the Inquirer. Jeff had a real good story in 2022 where he referenced is it Guy Clark? Is that the song?
Yes.
But Cape is
Yes.
the song. And then
Do you think he got the hookup on the actual speakers at the link? Like over the PA at the link?
Maybe so. But that song and how relatable it is to Jason and how like impactful it is in his life was that was really neat. And I listened to that song in the way to partly on the way to work this morning.
Wow.
Because I knew we were having this conversation.
Going method. I like that.
Yeah, to kind of put me in the mood. Yeah.
What kind of mood are we talking?
To get me ready for
Like you read Underdogs at a certain bookstore?
to get me ready for the show.
Zach, let me talk to you about FOCO before we get back to this conversation. FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. It's football and tailgating season, so they've got overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game. FOCO has hooked PHLY up and provided some awesome pieces for our set, which you can see just above the Underdogs book there. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use the promo code PHLY for 10% off. I thought a good job by Jason Kelce giving Colt Anderson's Up Top company a lot of natural advertisement. I thought that was good.
Now, I'm curious your perspective on this.
$50,000 for Super Bowl tickets?
Okay, what do you think of
Isn't
that?
that insane?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, players have spoken about that.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And they got to get him out there and put him up.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I know that it was expensive, but that is wild.
For sure.
Yeah.
So clearly,
Nothing for you, I guess. With those Munger,
That's not what I'm saying.
After all the advice that Warren Buffett has given you over the years.
No, that
I'm
jumped out to
joking.
me
I'm
as
joking.
well.
Go ahead.
That jumped out to me as well. Clearly, and he's talked about this, that he made this to kind of show a player transitioning.
Right.
At what point do you think? It seemed pretty clear that he thought throughout last year it was going to be his last year.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think he decided? Do you think he decided after the season? Do you think he knew?
Well, I mean, there's
Super
that
Bowl week?
scene of like it's the day before free agency, and he hasn't given the Eagles an answer
Exactly.
yet. So,
Yes.
I mean, I believe that he took it up to the end. I think it took until the very end for him to decide. Do you not? You think he's
No, but like to make that decision. But do you think he was leaning toward returning? I mean, you were by his locker after the Super Bowl. Did you think he was coming back? Did you think that was it for him?
I actually, at the Super Bowl, I thought that he was coming back.
Okay.
And I don't know, he says the thing about the, what Travis said in the summer about having lost in the Super Bowl, but, there's like, Sirianni comes up to him. It's the first time they've talked in the post-game Super Bowl locker room. Ben Kelsey's like, it's so hard to get here. But the tenor of it to me was like, we've got a great team. Like maybe we can do it again, sort of. It's not my business to predict what he's going to do. But I do sort of feel like this is the last run. But people have thought that before.
And it was so well done. But is there anything that like might have been on the cutting room floor that you would have wanted to see?
I mean, I was like all the family stuff I
Okay.
was eating up. You know, it would have been fun to see like sort of like the day-to-day living stuff,
yeah,
right? With them, you know, the scene of him just being like his body just totally broken down as he's playing with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. What about you? What jumped to you?
Yeah, like, you know, I've been out in public when Jason's been there, and
Yeah, and we've talked about this.
you know,
like,
and look, whenever there's cameras, you can't get the authentic
Right.
experience. But I was at an event this summer, you know, and when my wife wanted to go up to him and say hello, and I was like, don't bother Jason. And but it's like that when you see him in public, being Jason Kelce is almost overwhelming, and he handles it well. But I think that we saw so much of the private moments. I actually think that the public could have been. I think like seeing what it's like when Jason Kelce goes to the ice cream shop, or Jason.
Well, and
Kelce,
especially not when he's like alone there for an event, but like when he's out in public with his family, and it's like this is supposed to be my family time, and it's still like people are coming up. Like that's gotta be tough, because you also know that like this person's gonna remember this interaction.
Exactly.
Like I can't just be an a-hole,
and he's aware of that.
right? Like that's gotta be tough. All right, our last thing, Zach, from Shane. If you could have a Kelce-like documentary about another Eagle, current or former, who would it be?
So I don't think the Jalen one would be that revealing, right? Like I think he's so like programmed sometimes,
Right.
maybe. Let's see here. Barwin would probably be comparable to Kelce's in like a certain
Right.
regard. I think Jason Peters would be
Ooh,
an
that's a good
interesting
one.
But honestly, Dom DeSandro would be.
Oh, wow. You look at you coming in over the top.
Yeah, Dom DeSandro to me would be like the most fascinating one. Like following a Dom.
Yeah, I mean, if it was actually unfettered, then
If cameras followed Dom for a year, Dom DeSandro, of course, is the Eagles' director of security, or I should say vice president of security, assistant to the GM or special advisor to the GM. But Dom DeSandro would be the documentary I would most want to see.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Especially if he was going to be, if the whole thing is, curtain open, absolutely.
What about you?
Like Brandon Graham would be a lot of fun, but I think it would be a similar sort of tone to the Kelce thing, so not super different. I think in the end, I would probably have to choose between like Elijah Riley and Coyote Awashika and Christian Ellis and DeAndre Carter and Sua. So maybe Elijah Riley.
Okay. How about Nnamdi?
Nnamdi's an interesting one. Yeah. Vic. But in terms of like following a person for a year and not like just telling their life story, I think Dom is a good answer. Yeah. Maybe Devontae would be interesting to me because he doesn't show us, and it would be interesting to see what his real life is like.
Just sleeping in darkness?
Right. But I mean, he's got a kid. He can't just be sleeping in darkness.
True.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles Podcast. We are back tomorrow at 10, and then also at Friday at 10. We will have heard from coordinators tomorrow, and we're going to start getting into the Bucks-Eagles matchup a little bit more in depth ahead of the Monday night game, a matchup of two 2-0 teams. So for Zach and all of the listeners, thank you for giving us those questions. Maybe we'll get to a few more later in the week. Make sure that you are hitting subscribe and like on the YouTube button, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. So for all of us here, thanks for watching, and as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.